Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 85th part of What If Deku Was Sanji's Reincarnation, my Heroes Reborn. The author of this great fanfic is enterally. Links to them and original story in the description. Chapter 85, All Might's Last Fight. All Might glared at All for One, and once again punched his nemesis. Hibiki watched, knowing to jump in when anything happened. It wasn't his fight, it was All Might's. His role in the fight is to make sure he lived. Plus if he got a few good hit into the villain, that would just be a bonus, especially for someone bringing up Thanos. Plus he had plenty of backup as well for himself, including several hidden suits. Aiko, remind me to ask Momo to start a certain project if I make it, said Hibiki. Aiko, of course. Hibiki watched as All Might and wailed on each other. Hibiki noticed something in the rubble, and it was clear that All Might had also seen that person in the rubble. Even if the building that they had started fighting was abandoned, the fight was just getting bigger and bigger. One of the remade-controlled suit got the person out of the rubble and flew to them to safety. All Might looked at the one he was sure was Hibiki. Hibiki has started to blare music out of all of the other armors to create a sort of shell game to ensure that All for One didn't know which one was the real one. All for One recovered from the latest hit from All Might and came up with a plan. That was when All for One activated a certain quirk. Suddenly Hibiki was vomiting the goo and appeared right in front of All for One, clearly being used as a human shield. This turned out to be a mistake. He managed to get a good hit on All for One with a blast to the chest. Though unfortunately All Might was already about to hit Hibiki and the hit was very painful and harsh. Hibiki was sent careering to the ground. "Are you all right?" asked All Might. "Could be better," said Hibiki, "but I don't know if he'll try that again." It was clear that Hibiki thankfully could stand. "I'm expecting worse injuries as the fight goes on," said Hibiki. All Might didn't say anything as All for One got up. "I'm pulling back," said Hibiki. All Might nodded, knowing that Hibiki meant that he was pulling back and only providing backup if needed. All Might glared harshly at his nemesis. The fight was just getting started. Meanwhile, Class 1A's fight team was still fighting. "Are you going to keep playing around because this one of the last pockets left?" said Aiko. "You need to finish it." "I'm fine," said Katsuki. "Katsuki, you need to end this," said Aiko. "Right now All Might is having his last fight." "What?" asked Katsuki. "You know, because of his injury, and other reasons," said Aiko. "Other reasons?" asked Katsuki. "He told Hibiki and by extension me his biggest secret, so I know what he gave to Izuku," said Aiko. Katsuki's eyes widened. He sheathed his sword and used haki on the remaining Nomu, knocking them out instantly. "Katsuki!" yelled Momo. "I need something to hit!" yelled Katsuki. "I need to make them around." Momo glared at Katsuki. It was clear that if things were not the way they were going, she wanted to smack him. "Now's not the time for this," said Todoroki. "We need to regroup with the rest of the class," agreed Aiko. Katsuki began to walk away. "One of you need to grab him, the class is in the other direction," said Aiko. With the rest of the class, thankfully all damaged buddling were clear of any survivors. The Nomu had finally been defeated. Unfortunately someone needed to use a punching bag. Aiko informed Aizawa. "Of course," he muttered. "You might need to find some sort of screen or TV, by the way," said Aiko. "What?" asked Aizawa. "Let's just say that the fight All Might has gotten into is being shown all over the country," said Aiko. "It's something everyone needs to see." "Are you serious?" asked Aizawa. "I am," said Aiko. "Right now I'm keeping my jokes and snarks to minimum." Aizawa knew that Aiko could barely get through a conversation with snarking or joking about something. "This fight is really bad," said Aiko, "and I don't know how it's turned out." Aizawa started to sweat at that. Back with the fight, All for One was mocking All Might. brining up his mentor, trying to piss him off and pointing out things about how he took down his agents, forcing him to into the shadows. And it was working. All Might grabbed his arm and started to punch him hard, so hard that he shattered the black mask covering his face. During that time, as he taunted All Might more about his own mentor Nana Shimura, All for One launched All Might in the air. All Might was sent flying into the newscopter. But thankfully Hibiki, or one of his suits, flew in and grabbed All Might before he could hit the helicopters. "Thank you," said All Might. "Thank me by winning," said Hibiki. All Might chuckled at that. Thanks to the catch, All Might was able to get back into the fight. "Just be more careful," said Hibiki. "Try not to let the bastard get you." All Might nodded. Hibiki, who was indeed inhabiting the suit, noticed that All Might already starting to deflate. Half his face was in its deflated form. "Also try to keep it together, big guy," said Hibiki. All Might nodded, knowing what he meant. It was going to be difficult though. "I don't know what your fight before this has been, but be careful," said Hibiki. However, All for One just mocked All Might, talking about how he took everything from his, and that he was going to deliver the final blows to All Might's image. All for One created a large blast that engulfed the area. Hibiki took some of the blast, wrecking the armor he had only, but thanks to the fact their multiple suit backup, he took off the remnants and put on the new one. However, he noticed All Might. "You have got to be kidding me," he muttered. Everyone throughout the country were watching horror at All Might's deflated form. With Class 1A, both teams having been reunited, someone had set up a computer and projector and started steam the fight on a wall. Because it was a large group of heroes and heroes in training, they needed to see this. "Fuck, the damn computer wasn't kidding," muttered Katsuki. Achiko was scared for All Might. After all, besides Izuku, they were the only ones in class that knew All Might's injury. At the same time, many members of the class heard this. "What does that mean?" asked Todoroki. "He'll explain later," said Toru. "Don't worry." Katsuki looked at Toru. He realized that there was a chance she might know and decided not to question it. Due to her weird powers, it was better to not ask what she did and didn't know. Honestly, by this point, if she knew about One for All, he wouldn't be surprised one bit. "By the way, this was one of the softest spots I could find," Aiko suddenly said from all devices. "What does that mean?" asked Katsuki. "Hey! Look!" called out Toru. They noticed not too far away in the distance was something flying towards. Thanks to both Shoji and Jiro. "It's them," said Jiro. Thanks to Aiko leading the way via the suit, they soon made it. Izuku landed and put Kami down on the ground. Immediately his class launched themselves at him, with Achiko hugging him and crying. Soon Toru and Mina joined the hug as well. "Already informed the other schools that they are here with you," Aiko told Aizawa. Aizawa sighed at this but relived that he was there. He noticed the screen and what was being projected. All Might's thing, skeletal form. He knew that chances were good that something like this would happen. That All Might true form would be revealed, but to have be seen like this. Aizawa noticed the look on his student's face. "Okay, let me honest, why are you surprised he knows?" asked Aiko. Aizawa was about to say something but then realized that, well, everyone by this point knew that All Might was mentoring Izuku. It would be more surprising if Izuku didn't know about his true form. No, it was Katsuki and Achiko's reactions that cornered him more. "If you're wondering about Achiko, she found out during the Island incident. I was with her when she first found out. As for Katsuki," said Aiko, "I don't know. I'm not all-knowing, despite being close to." She wasn't told that All Might outright showed him yet. It was a busy day, it made sense that wasn't brought up. Still, they already know about his health, said Aiko. "Maybe Toru from the sounds of it, but that one. Let's not think about it," sighed Aizawa. "That's become my mantra when it comes to Toru, to be honest," sighed Aiko. Aizawa wasn't sure if she was joining back with All Might. Of course the toe had a back and forth about All Might not giving up. However, All for One had a bombshell to drop. Just one more thing. Tamura Shigaraki is the grandson of Nana Shimura, said All for One. All Might's eyes widened in shock and horror. I was wondering what could alienate your gold heart. Then I found Tamura and groomed him to hate you. And watch you smile so proudly as you beat your master's descent, mocked All for One. No, that's a lie, that's impossible, said All Might in shock. Come now, you know it's true, it's exactly what I would do, said All for One. All Might proceeded. It went through his head. All Might screamed in anguish at this. All for One laughed at the anguish of his nemesis. Then suddenly he by many blasts from many different angles hit him. It of course came from the suits. All Might looked up. One of the suits landed next him and the helmet opened up, releveling the real Hibiki as his music stopped. You good big guy? Asked Hibiki. All Might nodded. He realized that Hibiki was doing this despite the danger because what was said crossed a line. You heard? Scat All Might. You still got the earpiece in? Pointed out Hibiki. Aiko heard, she transcribed it for me. Yeah, I've been quiet for you. Aiko told All Might in his earpiece, you don't need to hear my occasional snark in this fight. You two were close, weren't you? Asked Hibiki. All Might nodded. So yeah, can't blame you for that reaction, said Hibiki. The guy is a bastard. He will go for any low blow he can find. All Might nodded, remembering when All for One brought up something from his past life. What that bastard brought up from my past life, said Hibiki, and he made a mistake for bringing it up. I won't ask what happened, said All Might. Hibiki flinched at the horrible memories, especially as his own protege turned to dust in his arms. Thank you, said Hibiki. It was clear that One for All was recovering from the attack. Hibiki's helmet once again covered his face and the music started to blare out of him once again. Kick his ass, All Might, said Hibiki. Beat the potato-headed bastard, said Aiko. All Might nodded at the younger hero. All for One got up and he looked at All Might. Well, not really, the truth was he lacked eyes. There was a reason why Aiko called him a potato-headed bastard. He then put his quirk into one of his arms. There's so much that a hero has to protect, said All Might, and I will show it by beating you. He knew that all over Japan people had to be watching the fight and knew they were cheering him. However, All for One knew what he had to do. All Might and Hibiki watched in horror as one of All for One's armed ballooned into horrified proportions. Not only that, but other things were in his arm as well as such a drills. Still, it was clear that this was going to be the final attack. I've noticed that you are losing your strength. You've already passed on One for All, said All for One. Izuku Midoriya, he is the one. All Might grimaced. Of course he knew that All for One had figured it out. Still, he had to keep going despite it. The two fists collided. However, it was clear that All for One was winning. Not only that, but All Might's arm started to bleed profusely. You think that your successor will remain a hero? He was a criminal in his past life. It doesn't matter what kind of twisted world he came from, he might go back to his old ways, mocked All for One. You know, I wouldn't use that as a way to hurt me because I know that his past life isn't like his current life, said All Might. All Might came up with a plan to trick him by switching where he put the powers of his arms. While his arm got broken, he successfully punched All for One in the face. You're running out of power, that was so weak that it barely even hurt, taunted All for One. That's because I didn't put my back into it, said All Might. He gathered up all of the remaining One for All power within him, focusing it on everyone on his arm. Untied states of smash. He yelled, punching All for One with such a harsh that not only that he was forced into a crater, but it also created a tornado. Goodbye One for All, thought All Might as he felt the final embers of the quirk disappear from his body. Once the tornado had cleared, it was clear that All Might was still standing. All Might teased his fist in the air, as All Might stood triumphantly over his enemy. He quickly buffed up as a show. All thought out Japan, everyone cheered him on. Though there were a few people didn't cheer. Of course Gran Torino watched knowing what it meant. Mizu watched silently knowing what had just happened. Tsukachi sighed from where he was watching. Hibiki landed, turned off his music and getting out of his armor. You know, you probably earned yourself a lot of attention, said Aiko. I know, replied Hibiki. I know you always wanted to lay low, said Aiko, considering everything I know from your past life. Hibiki was quiet. You're going to get a fame for being the guy who helped All Might in his last stand, said Aiko. I know, said Hibiki. Other heroes showed up to help with people that Hibiki missed, while he also performed search and rescue during All Might's fight. A large area due to the fight was completely destroyed. Still, All for One was still alive despite everything. He was being led away, sure, but he was arrested and being led away. A reporter is also covering. All Might having reverted back to his true form, he pointed to the report. Now, it's you turn, said All Might to the reporter. In the area where Class 1A was watching, just about everyone thought it was a message for all criminals that All Might revealed in such a fight. However, Izuku was crying, because he knew that truth. He knew that All Might used the last of One for All. Achiko held his hand. She didn't know the whole truth, but she knew enough to know that All Might wasn't going to fight again after this. Katsuki watched knowing that All Might had lost the remainder of the quirk, and he knew he had to be there for his brother in all but blood. And Izuku cried. He did know since that this was the last fight he would have since the reassessment. But it was still a lot. Still, it was the end of an era. All Might was over, but also the beginning of a new era. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 86. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.